Hey everyone. So I'm so grateful to be here with you on this Thursday for our weekly trainings, and I am super excited about this training in particular because it is probably the most crucial part of your healing when it comes to overcoming toxic relationships. So you all know the drill. If you're here with me live, then go ahead and hashtag live, drop a comment, drop a heart, tell me that you're here. And if you are watching the replay, then go ahead and hashtag replay. So I just want to wait till a few more people hop on here. And okay, so now people are starting to hop on. Awesome. Hey Morgan, so good to see you. Awesome. So when it comes to healing the inner child, this is one of the most absolute important parts. The inner child is the foundation for your relationship patterns, okay? And so I love that we're talking about this because it's also one of the most overlooked things. So many times I've heard that people don't really understand what the inner child means, that it has anything to do with healing from our toxic relationships, that it has anything to do with relationships in general. So that's what we're going to dive into today. We're going to talk about, what the inner child is, who that inner child is, what that inner child kind of sounds like, and how this is running your toxic relationships and how it's been running really your life. And so to go ahead and get into it, the inner child is that part of you. We all have an inner child, and we also every single one of us have inner child wounds. And so that inner child is what we carry with us day to day. There's parts of ourselves that are younger that if you've noticed maybe yourself feeling a bit childish if somebody doesn't call you back right away, or if you get triggered. It kind of feels like irrational behavior or irrational decisions. And that's when the inner child is getting triggered and she automatically thinks she's not safe and goes into fight or flight mode and then reacts. And so the inner child, she's very delicate. And she wants to be seen and heard and validated. And that's why when we push these thoughts and feelings off, they come back stronger and they come back with behaviors attached to them. And so, like I said, everyone has inner child trauma. And the degree of it, when I say trauma, I know that it trips people up. And when I say trauma, it can be capital T or baby T. Hey Sandra, so good to see you. Thanks for joining today. It can be capital T trauma or baby T trauma. And what capital T trauma would be is if you experienced sexual abuse, physical abuse in childhood, if you were emotionally neglected, physically neglected, a parent or caregiver abandoned you, a parent or sibling died. There's countless capital T traumas that we can go over, but those are some of the main ones that I see so commonly. And then there's the baby T traumas, which are for a few examples, maybe not getting enough hugs as a kid. Maybe your parents worked a lot and you didn't get the type of attention that you wanted. Maybe you grew up with a narcissistic parent or a parent that was emotionally unavailable, or maybe an alcoholic. When we grow up in alcoholic or otherwise dysfunctional homes, that causes our inner child to automatically think something is wrong with us. We have these outside dynamics, these parent dynamics, these family dynamics that as a child, we only see black or white. As a child, we do not have logic. And so when something outside of us happens, if a parent isn't giving us what we need, if a parent left, if our emotions were not taken care of in the right way, maybe we were crying and we didn't get the validation, maybe we were told to stop crying, maybe we got spanked. There's so many things that go into this. And, I've worked with so many women, and I've been on calls with so many women. And a really common thing that I hear is, they'll tell me that they're going through this toxic relationship, and I ask you where it stems from. And they typically tell me something that was like in their teens or their early 20s. But the thing is, I always ask to go deeper, because it's typically between ages 0 and 7 that some event, some kind of experience happened, and our inner child was wounded. And so when our inner child is wounded and we didn't get the love that we need, the attention that we needed, or maybe our parents were really strict and we didn't have freedom, we couldn't make decisions, we automatically the automatic go-to for children is something must be wrong with me. Mom and dad yell a lot, so it must be my fault. Mom and dad got divorced, it must be my fault. This person sexually or physically abused me, so something must be wrong with me. And it disrupts our identity and our self-love and our self-worth on such a deep level. And so as an adult, you could be saying, like, I do love myself. I have normal self-esteem. My childhood was great. The thing is, logically, we can be like, yeah, I know that I'm worthy of love, and, I know that I do great things, and I'm really good at my job, or, whatever the case may be. But that inner child does not believe those things. That's why logically here, on the other side, logically, we're like, yeah, I know that. But then we have this core feeling where we just don't quite believe it on a very deep core level. And this is where, so we operate 5% of our conscious mind and 95% of our unconscious mind. The inner child is operating at the subconscious. The subconscious is conditioning, patterning, beliefs. That's what lies in the subconscious, and we are conditioned in childhood what our beliefs are, whether it's about love, whether it's about money. If you heard your parents saying, this is something that my dad would always say, is like, oh, all men are pigs, and then asks me, why aren't you married? You know what I mean? And so when we have these beliefs of all men are pigs, and then we have this belief that we carry with us throughout our life, that stems from what we hear in childhood. It's very rare that we create beliefs, very rare that we create beliefs in adulthood or in adolescent years. Like we can train ourselves to do that, but the core beliefs that we have come from that inner child, those childhood experiences and conditioning. Like if you can think to the way your parents talked about relationships, or talked about money, or talked about people who were rich or poor, or if they fought a lot in their relationship. Think about that, and then think about how that's projected into your beliefs. So that is how our inner child processes this, and that's how it begins to affect our patterns today. And so when it comes to being able to connect the patterns, like our inner child is typically playful and fun and carefree and authentic. The person that we want to be all the time, we're like, why can't I just play and have fun and be free and be authentic without caring about what people are thinking of me or fearing that rejection and abandonment? A healthy inner child is carefree and allows themselves to be that authentic self, right? But through the wounds and through the pain, that's where we be conditioned to feel like maybe we have to overachieve to gain mom and dad's love, or maybe we have to perform in order to get attention. Maybe we have to act out to get attention. And so there's so many different factors here. And every single one of my clients that I have ever had, including myself, has all, they have a very common theme. And that is something, and I'm like, one of my superpowers, you guys, is being able to connect the dots between what happened in childhood and your present day relationship patterns, even if you have no idea where this comes from. I can help you figure it out. It does take some time and some energy and some subconscious work I do a lot of subconscious work with my clients, and that is why change has been so effective and in such an accelerated way. And so being able, they all have a common theme of something that happened in childhood that made them feel not good enough. And so we can see how that projects into, and all of you guys here, if you're here with me, then chances are you've dealt with these toxic relationships. And so we have to be able, the very first step in even overcoming the toxic relationships is to heal this inner child, the most crucial part. And I am so passionate about this because otherwise it's like we're slapping a Band-Aid on the symptoms and we're not healing the root cause of the problem. And that's probably why you feel good for a little bit, and then when you get triggered, you fall back into old patterns. And when we're trying to create new foundations and when we're trying to heal from these toxic relationships and get out of these toxic relationships, we have to go back to the original scene of the original wound. And if we don't do that, it's like we're building on a foundation of trauma, and a foundation of trauma is very unstable. And so how you know, we'll go into this, what it has to do with our romantic relationships. When we have wounds of feeling rejected or abandoned or misunderstood or invalidated, or we had a parent that was abusive or dysfunctional, when I say this stuff, we're not looking to blame our parents or our caregivers. All we're looking to do is to bring awareness. Because again, I've heard, I don't want to blame my parents. My parents were great. I'm not saying that they're not. All I'm doing is bringing awareness to where these wounds are coming from, because we're all doing the best we can with what we know how. Chances are, if you had a dysfunctional childhood, then your parents had a dysfunctional childhood. And so, that's where you see the generational trauma start to play out, right? And you want to be the one that ends that trauma. Just like I'm trying to be that in my family. I want to end this generational trauma so that my daughter doesn't go through the same thing that I had. And once we're able to heal our inner child, you're able to see every single relationship in your life will begin to heal. And so the way that it comes out in your romantic relationships is your subconscious seeks these people out because it wants to be able to recreate the experiences or trauma that you experienced in childhood, because it needs a healed outcome. It's like, okay, let me recreate this experience, but have a different outcome so I can finally get closure and be healed. And so when it comes down to that, you can see the similarities between your toxic partners and the parent that you had the most turmoil with when you were younger. And so just keep that in mind. You will be able to see similarities, and they may be freaking obvious, and they may not be obvious. And that's where I come in, and I'm like, hey, what about this, and this, and we're connecting the dots. And so that's how they come out in our romantic relationships. And so we'll continuously seek out these people and be attracted to them. Our chemistry, when we have really hot chemistry with somebody, what that is it's our psyche finding that familiarity in someone else that relates back to a wound that you had in childhood. That's what that hot chemistry is. Have you ever noticed how hot the chemistry is with the toxic person? I bet all of you can relate to this. We have the hottest chemistry with the people who treat us like shit. And that's what it is. That's the reasoning behind it. It's crazy, right? And we don't know what we don't know. And so that's why I'm bringing awareness so that we can move forward from that. And so that's, when you notice these patterns of like, wow, this boyfriend was just the same as my one before, and the one before that, and the one before that. And then that's weird. It really reminds me of the way that my mom used to treat me when she didn't validate my feelings and would emotionally neglect me. You know what I mean? And that's just an example. And so how you know when your inner child is in the driver's seat. This is important so that you know what to look out for. When something happens, it could be maybe a guy didn't call you back right away, or a friend didn't call you back right away, or, a coworker made you feel small or insignificant. You kind of start to feel panicky, defensive, irrational, childish, and it's normal because that's your inner child wound being activated. And so irrational behaviors is one way to know when your inner child is in the driver's seat. Tantrums, like we have tantrums as adults, and that is our inner child saying, hey, I'm in danger. Your inner child thinks that she's in danger when we get triggered. And so that's why you notice these behaviors. Impulsive behavior. Impulsive behavior was like my trauma response. I was very impulsive with drinking, dating, sex, drugs, making impulsive buying decisions, making, shopping, online shopping. Doing these behaviors is a inner child trauma response. Black and white thinking. So have you ever noticed it had to be all or nothing, black and white? There was no gray area. So whether that's in your relationships, it's either perfect or I'm leaving. There's no room for communication or for compromise. It's always that all or nothing, black or white. I either feel good or I fucking hate myself. That was my thing. I felt great about myself or I was in deep, deep despair and I wanted to end my life. Those were my very two polar opposites. And I don't have that anymore because my inner child is no longer triggered in that way. And then freezing. If we freeze, if we're indecisive, fearful, fear of rejection, when you notice yourself getting fearful that somebody's abandoning you or rejecting you and you pull back or you make these behaviors or you stalk them online, or you make fake profiles, you know what I mean? There's so many different ways that our inner child is coming out and having these childish behaviors. When our inner child is healed, you will notice there's so much logic. We can now master our emotions. When we have a healed inner child, our emotions are very much manageable. They are logical. We've learned to master them because we don't have this intense trigger, these intense emotions driving our behavior. We're able to look at this and be like, okay, I recognize that this is making me feel this way and this is how I'm going to respond. We're very much more proactive than reactive. And so that is how you know when the inner child is in the driver's seat. And so this is what happens when you heal the inner child. You gain emotional intelligence. You are able to love yourself on a deep, deep level. And I'm really excited because I'm doing a self-love immersion coming up in this next couple weeks. I've been talking about it a little bit, and we dive deep into this. We are We're diving deep into self-love, healing core wounds, so that we can overcome codependency and fear of rejection and abandonment. And so I'll let me know if you guys are interested in that. Comment it below, and I'll give you the details when they come. But that is something that you gain when you heal the inner child, is you're able to love yourself on such a core level. And when I talk about loving yourself means respecting yourself, making decisions that are good for you, putting yourself first, creating boundaries, good hygiene, mental health, physical health, those kind of things, like talking to yourself in a nice way. I'll hear people say that they're like, well, yeah, I love myself. Like, I like to have people rate that. And so they're like, oh yeah, like I love myself like 7 out of 10. And then we talk about the inner critic and they're like, oh, I have a 9 out of 10 inner critic. And I'm like, then you probably have a very low, or very high lack of self-love. And so, there's a reason we have these negative inner thoughts, and those negative inner thoughts, like when we don't love ourselves, we have a lack of self-love. We can catch ourselves saying, why am I so dumb? Why can't I ever be on time? Can I ever get anything right? Those kind of things. And so if you notice that, then you're lacking self-love, and that shows where you need healing with the inner child. First step to, when you also heal your inner child, you're able to be more of your authentic self. Think about this. How many times have you been in a relationship that you could not be yourself? Like you always had to hold back, or you were scared to say something, or scared to get your emotional or physical needs met. That is that fearful inner child. And when you heal that, you're able to be your authentic self. You're seeing yourself shine through more. I always say, like, when we do this work, we become the person that we were meant to be before all the bullshit and the trauma happened. And I get to see that every day with my clients. It's such a beautiful thing to be able to see their authentic self come out, and to see like these smiles and this goofiness, and being able to bring that into a relationship. And so, oh, Carrie, I'm so glad that you were able to catch me live. Awesome. And thank you so much, Margie. I see that you said, Morgan, you helped me tremendously. Thank you. Awesome. So glad that you're here, Margie. And so when we are able to be our authentic selves, you know, we're that person that we were meant to be. And we just have to clear out all the bullshit, right? And so when we also heal this inner child, that's when you'll notice that you'll become more independent. Any attachment style, I hear so much about attachment styles, anxious, disorganized, avoidant, fearful avoidant, all of those things. I've said this before, attachment styles are good to a degree, but there's a lot that we need to stop doing with them. And so I'll share that with you guys eventually. But if you identify with attachment styles, this is where that healing is going to begin. Your anxious attachment is going to fall away. Your codependency is going to fall away. You'll notice that your depression and your anxiety is going to begin to lift. And so like, this is where the healing begins. And so the first step into healing this is figuring out where these wounds come from. Like I said, that's my superpower. I can easily see where wounds come from and how they relate to your adult life, but you have to really look within and see, okay, I fear that the guy that I'm seeing is going to break up with me, or he's going to cheat on me. You know, going back and seeing where are these things coming from on a deeper level. It's not because your boyfriend before cheated on you. It has something to do with it, but it goes further and deeper than that. And so we have to look at our childhood, ages between 0 and 7, where maybe you did not get the healing, or maybe you didn't get the love or the attention or the affection, the validation that you need. Once you figure that out, awareness is the catalyst for change. It will help you tremendously. And then being able to give yourself the love and affection and attention that you needed when you were younger. So it's about, it's not only about giving your younger self their childhood back by fulfilling their desires. It's about bringing closure to the events that trigger you because of anything that happened with your parents, your caregivers, your siblings, your peers, your teachers. It doesn't always have to be a parent. I've had clients have issues with teachers or coaches that were verbally, abusive or aggressive or hard on them. And so there's so many different things that it could be, but it's your responsibility to figure this out. And so being able to go back and be able to soothe your inner child. Imagine her in front of you and just soothe her and tell her all the things that she needs to hear, whether that is she's loved, maybe she needs a hug, maybe she needs to know that she is important, or that you're proud of her, or that somebody is proud of her. So that being able to go back and kind of, that's how we rewire the neural pathways. Rewiring the neural pathways to have different experiences from your childhood, even if it's not true. If you can imagine that you got the love that you needed, or you got the attention, your brain doesn't know the difference between fantasy and reality. It doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. And so when you do that, when you imagine yourself going back and hugging your inner child and soothing her and loving her, your mind actually thinks that it's happening. And so it begins to bring peace. It begins to bring happiness, joy. It soothes anxiety, depression. Like it all stems back to this. This is what I dive deep into with my private clients. This is what we spend time healing and focusing on, because this is the most important. If you do nothing else ever in your healing, this is the most important. This will allow you to accelerate your healing tremendously. So I hope that this was helpful for you all. This is obviously, I'm very, very passionate about this subject and this part in the healing. And so if you guys have any questions, if you have no idea where this trauma is coming from, or maybe you do and you're not quite sure how to make these connections or what to do next, reach out to me and I can help you, pinpoint things and really walk you through and give you some in-depth insight that will be really helpful. So go ahead and either comment in the comments below, or go ahead and go straight to my direct messages. I love you all so much. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you next week. Bye, everyone.